Oh, here we go. Let's try this. All right. Hello, everybody. Just a second. Can't hear anything. Hey, I figured it out. For some reason, my microphone was not connecting, so I apologize, everyone, for that. Hopefully you can hear me now. I can hear me. Great. Okay, perfect. Nick Force says again. Nick, I believe, Nick, you just gave me a shout out over on Comic Art Fans, man. I appreciate that. If you guys haven't seen it, they've been doing some cool interviews over there at Comic Art Fans. And Nick did one recently. It was really awesome. Showed off some cool pieces. I watched a good chunk of it. Okay, so tonight I wanted to, I had done this zine, Prophets of Disclosure, which I debuted at Cake a few weeks back, the Chicago Alternative Comics Expo. And, sorry. Guys, this is how my day's going. This is how my day's going. Okay, you monkey. All right. Here we go. So, Prophets of Disclosure. And the zine is sort of an exploration of a community or topic that I follow. I follow a lot of UFO and disclosure and conspiracy theory people on podcasts and YouTube and things like that. And it's something I listen to a lot while I work. And I've grown quite affectionate towards this community. As someone who has had a lifelong interest in topics like UFOs and stuff, I've sort of evolved quite a bit in the way I think about all that, but I've always been intrigued by all these, people who do presentations and things about it. And so I decided I would go ahead and just make a little zine for myself that would give me a chance to put some of this out there and see if it resonated with anyone else. If you've ever watched Ancient Aliens, you might have heard of some of the people that are featured in it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the art that I did for it and kind of give a little brief overview of each one of the guys as we go through the book. I'm probably not going to read the whole thing word for word because I would love it if anybody here wants to still pick them up. I'm hoping to... I just got them reprinted because I was running out of them just from Cake. And I also had a couple errors I wanted to fix inside. And so what I was trying to do with it was get a reprint done that had the errors fixed. And so that's what I'm going to have stocked in my shop. I'm probably going to drop this and some other things soon. I'll announce it on my newsletter. I'll probably be dropping, I gotta go grab that. I just got comps of my Planet Death cover, so I'll show that in a second here. But let me check in with the chat really quick. Nick says, totally happy to give you a shout out. Thanks, man. Jeremy, evening tea. Hope you're well. Good to hear from you too, buddy. You've been busy. I've seen you lately doing lots of really cool stuff. Nick Force says, kudos to waiting through the 3-hour interview. Well, Nick, what's nice about the stuff like that, I don't mind the long interviews and the long talking. I'll talk about that when I get into this, because I can listen to it while I work and then just look up when there's something interesting that I want to see. And that's sort of how I got hooked on these things, because these guys all talk a lot, do very long podcasts and whatnot. But you guys can all hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm just going to grab that Planet Death cover so I can show that to everybody. So I don't know if everybody, if people had heard about this book. There was a cool black and white ash can of it at C2E2. And I was asked by a shop, Borderlands Comics, I was asked by them to do a exclusive, cover. And so I did this one, which I think I showed the original art for it off already, but if I didn't, let me see if I have it handy here. Oh, you know what? I don't, because it's in my portfolio. I just redid my portfolio. But anyway, I think I had this one on a past stream, and then this is what it looked like in full color. And the book itself is pretty neat. It has shades of like Travis Charest or Juan Jimenez. It's got a lot of really nicely rendered sort of battle scenes and stuff. And this is a thick book. It's like 40 pages or something. And so I'll have these up in the shop as well, and if you buy it from me, it's gonna be pretty close to cover price, and I'll go ahead and sign them as well for people. So that will be available. This will be available, Prophets of Disclosure, which we'll go over in a second, and then I'm hoping to also have some copies of my Fantastic Four story, which is coming out next week. I still encourage you to go get it at your shop if you can, but I might put some up with signatures on my website. Unfortunately, I won't have those until probably after the book is already on the shelf. So if you want to get it right when it comes out, which is next week, I think 2 weeks from now, the 25th, something like that, you should grab it. I'll try to do a stream on that day as well. Ichthus, what's up? Total Excellence. Let's see. Kova, yo. Ichthus, Planet Death looks sick. Very Doom Guy. Yes, it is very Doom Guy. And the other thing I've been working on lately is very Warhammer Doom Guy, and I can't show any of that yet. But I've got all these secret projects, you guys, and I wish I could tell you all about them. I feel like when we get to the fall, all of a sudden, all these things will be known, hopefully, and then I can, show more of it. But one thing I was just going to run through quick. I didn't post all these yet, so if you, you'll still see me post these. But I was going to show some of these commissions that I did. This one, it's too big to show on here, but 11 by 17. This is an Akira piece. This is from my friend Minerva Fox, who is an awesome streamer and artist. She goes by Blue Troller, I believe, on social media. But Minerva Fox does amazing art. And she did a piece for the ERIS source book, which you guys will see soon when that book is ready. It's actually shipped from the printer now, which is great. But anyway, she did a piece, and so I made her a piece. And she wanted Akira, so she got Akira. She gets what she wants, I did this Conan. I posted that recently. That one was fun. I always love drawing Conan. If you want me to have fun on a commission, give me Conan. This is General Kale from Willow. I love Willow. This is one of my favorite movie bad guys. I love General Kale. So when I got this commission, I was like, oh yeah, man. I wanted to go with some Frazetta vibes, but still my little weird kind of version of things that I do. Got an Ultra Mega here. This one turned out all right. I was trying to work text into some of these. This is a Silver Surfer. I posted this today. My scanner's not great with colors, so sometimes it just doesn't look as good when I post them as it does in real life. So hopefully the commissioner will really appreciate what this looks like in real life. And then here's a Dazzler. I did not post this one yet. That one I really wanted to mess with sort of effects and lettering. That was pretty fun. And then this one was pretty special. This guy has commissioned me a lot, and his wife worked on a Star Wars show, and there was a character of him, and so he wanted me to draw the character with but even though it's a kid's show, he wanted to be very violent. So, when you ask me to do violent, I deliver. Let's see. ND8 out of my mind. That's right, Nick. Nick, this is killing me. These commissions are incredible. Nick, this says thank you. When are you going to post another newsletter? Probably when I drop these books, and right around the same time I'm going to do another post for. So probably this month, later this month, I'll do one. Ichthus likes the Conan piece. Thank you, man. The Willow one, that's right. Stellar Silver Surfer, Ultra Mega. I love that surfer. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. That's very kind of you all. and it's fun because I like doing those commissions, and I like doing the big action comic stuff that I've been doing lately. But there's also a part of me that still really connects with handmade books that you do yourself. Like I printed these with my friend Beth and assembled them all by myself, with Beth's help. But we did it by hand, and I made all these drawings about this thing that only I'm into. This is the world that I played in for a long time, and I still do a little bit, and that's sort of more of a self-published, indie comics, whatever you want to call it, scene, where you get to explore lots of different kinds of topics that maybe you aren't going to see in the mainstream publishers. And it's so vital, I think, to the medium, but also just for me creatively, I like to dabble in different things. And so these are all different drawings I did of these personalities, and I'll go through them in the book and tell you a little bit about them. But these are all different people that talk about UFOs or disclosure, conspiracy theories, and I probably could have done 20 or 30 more people on top of these ones. So yeah, they are just kind of like I would call them personalities, UFO personalities. They're sort of like the ones who are talking about the topic and have followings and also have infighting with each other. This guy's my favorite, actually, David Wilcock. He's hilarious. I hand-lettered the back cover, which has a quote from Chariots of the Gods, the one that kind of started it all. There's the cover. There's some little things you'll see in here that are hand-drawn. There's Lou Elizondo, big-time grifter. Stephen Greer, the OG grifter. Carrie Cassidy, she's a little less known, but hilarious as well. David Icke, the British reptilian guy. And Nick Pope, he's kind of like a dorky X-Files guy, and Richard Dolan. So these are the guys. I did these all 6x9, and I just did them sort of for fun. Like, no one asked me to do this. And I wanted to put zips on all of them, and I wanted to explore kind of a more caricature style. And, just do something different from a comic of guys shooting and punching and cutting each other up like I usually do, which is lots of fun, but just something a little different. Disclosure is this word that kind of means a lot of different things depending on the context, but in the context of the UFOs, disclosure is sort of about this idea that the government has secret information about UFOs or non-human beings, interdimensional beings, time travelers, whatever. And, people in the disclosure community are saying that the government should release that information to us. And so what I started with here is because there's maybe some people that are familiar with some of these people via stuff like Ancient Aliens. But I figured even if you were, or even if you weren't, a little guide of glossary of terms would be helpful. So the zine has a little glossary of terms here, things like ATIP, UFO, UAP, Secret Space Program, Ancient Aliens, Edgar Cayce, Atacama Skeleton, the Law of One material, things that you might have heard of, maybe not. But hopefully you get the idea that this is a whole world that sort of... this is a whole world that, it's almost like its own fictional world where there's all these different types of characters in it. And then all these different characters have their own fictions that they're coming up with, or their own, they might not say that they're fictions, but their own stories that all interrelate with each other, and people will take things from other people. I didn't put this together in any specific order other than just I mixed up the drawings in the order I kind of thought they'd look good in. But this first guy, Nick Pope, is pretty interesting. He's on a lot of news channel things whenever a UFO comes up in the news, or if ever there's like Ancient Aliens, he's on there, of course. So I have a guide here. It says if they've appeared on Ancient Aliens, and then I give them an assessment, and then sort of my recommendation, like if you should follow Nick if you're interested in disclosure and you missed the X-Files. And that's because Nick Pope calls himself the British Fox Mulder, because he worked at the UFO kind of informational desk for the British government for like 3 years. And then he's been talking about it for 30 years. But he's also, the thing that was interesting about Nick to me is when he originally came on the scene for me, when I noticed him, is that he did feel more legit and even-tempered. And he wasn't like saying aliens are coming to get us, or you're going to ascend to the next level if you follow Ra from the Law of One. He was just talking about the different cases from history. And so he was pretty interesting to listen to, but he's also written some fictional books where he says, he takes information from what he learned as a UFO desk person. But he's also kind of become one of those people that has a problem with the whole COVID situation. And so, he's definitely a weird guy. And then the other thing he does is he hosts the Ancient Aliens Live thing. So if you've never seen Ancient Aliens, it's a show about people who say aliens came to the planet and had a civilization here before the current civilization, and maybe seeded the human race and stuff like that. I can't believe I'm talking about this on a stream right now. But anyway, he's one of the guys that hosts the live shows they do of that. Edison Neo says, "Yo, Tyrell. Hey, buddy. Glad you guys are here. And I'm not sure if everyone will be interested in this, but stick with me for a minute and see. And maybe you'll get intrigued by some of these guys. But Nick did a series on the New York Post's video YouTube channel with Stephen Greenstreet, which was pretty interesting because the original series is kind of diving into UFOs and kind of from a maybe this is real kind of a deal. And then Stephen Greenstreet, who's another guy who could be in this book, kind of turned the other way and said all this UFO stuff is fake. And so Nick has been on multiple kind of shows like that where they're exposing the truth or talking about how it's fake. I try to make this kind of funny. There's some goofy stuff in here. Like I have key claims for each person. This guy, one of his key claims I put here for him is 3 years of work at the government's UFO desk can provide a lifetime of books and speaking engagements. The other thing is this guy could also maybe be a government operative, which, speaking of government operatives, Lou Elizondo. Lou Elizondo is a guy that came out maybe 2017-ish, and then around 2019, when they released those UAP the Tic Tac and the Go Fast videos, if you guys are familiar with those. The New York Times did an article about it, sort of legitimizing the idea of UAPs and UFOs. I have lots of thoughts on that I won't get into, but one of the guys at the forefront of that, and maybe the person who leaked the videos, was Lou Elizondo, who is a former CIA agent. And it's been crazy to watch this community of people, like X-Files type people, the UFO disclosure community, go from being one that doesn't trust the government to like really accepting ex-CIA agents that say they're giving us the truth. It's been a crazy shift over the last 10 years. But anyway, this guy, I don't trust this guy. He has claimed that he was in charge of a program at the Department of Defense called ATIP, but no one has ever officially said that he was in charge of that program. That's been flip-flopped a bunch of times. This is something you might have read in the New York Times, whatever it was, 5-10 years ago, almost 8 years ago now. But if you never followed up on it, this guy just got shadier and shadier, and the whole thing looked weirder and weirder. And so, for example, it became clear he was the one who leaked those videos. And then he also wrote a memoir about it where he talks about how he is able to have psychic powers and read people's minds. And, his claims go from being the government has some pictures of UFOs to being like, I'm a super soldier and I'm telekinetic and stuff like that. He also has made it a big point to basically say that the other people talking about this, like the other people in this book, all these people are going to talk about here, that they're all just wrong, and he's the one with the truth. He's been on Joe Rogan, which is another, take that for whatever that means to you. Jeremy Heiler, yep, the whole convo is shifting. What do you think of the wall of lights in space coming to Earth? Well, a lot of times when those kind of stories get posted, everything now is so clickbaity, and I think that's why UFOs are so popular right now, is because these are easy topics to sort of take a little bit of science that's been in the news and extrapolate something from it and write like a headline that gets people to click it. And then once you got them to click it, you're off to the races, right? You got their money, you got their information, you can sell it. Who cares what the article is actually about? So a lot of times they'll be like, oh, this object's coming toward Earth. It can't be a comet or whatever. And then you give it 5 or 6 months and they're like, well, no, that's not what we said. It's, it just means it's a thing. We're never going to know because it's never going to come close to here, these kind of things. But then there's people like Stephen Greer who will claim that means that something's coming, that is coming, Stephen's a little bit less about that. So Stephen's one of the OGs. He was also on Rogan, but fun fact about Stephen Greer, his interview with Joe Rogan has been completely deleted from the podcast history. One of the few episodes that Joe Rogan was not willing to keep on, which is saying something. Stephen Greer is just a country doctor, he reminds us all the time. He's very jacked, and he was an ER doctor for, 10 years. 10 years, yeah, in Virginia. And then after that, he founded he kind of switched and became a full-time, I guess, UFO guy, you'd call him. And so back in the 90s, he founded CSETI, which is the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And he was on things like Larry King Live. And then he did a big press conference in 2001 that got a lot of people's attention because he had all these former intelligence officers and military telling him, giving testimony that they knew that there was UFOs that had been recovered by the government. He talks a lot about how we have real UFOs and then there's UFOs that have been created by humans, copies of them. He also always says that he's briefed every president since George Bush about UFOs, but none of the presidential libraries have any record that they've ever had meetings with him. But his recent grift is one of the most egregious ones. It's called CE5, which is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which he says is when humans contact aliens and ask them to come and visit us. And he will let people pay him thousands of dollars to go out and meditate with him, and then they start to see lights in the sky, probably lasers that are on clouds. And he says that it's from them meditating to bring them down. He also has an app that you have to pay for to learn how to do this, even though he says anybody can do it. To go back really quick, I forgot to mention that my ratings here. So my ratings for people are how much of a true believer are they, which is like, do they really believe what they're saying? How much of a grifter are they, which means are they just trying to get money out of this? How much of a narcissist they are, which is like pretty obvious. Like some of these guys have a pretty big opinion of themselves when they talk about being a secret space soldier. Whether they're a harmless dork or whether they just need help, like they have some mental health issues that they need to work on. So for example, Lou Elizondo, I don't think he's a true believer. I think he's a big-time grifter that's just trying to make money off of UFO people, and he's a narcissist. Stephen Greer, definitely a narcissist, 100% a grifter. He's done a bunch of documentaries as well, full of non-information. He pushes things like fake alien skeletons that are actually deformed humans, things like that. Big-time narcissist. A little bit of a harmless dork, though. I don't think he needs help. I just think he's a dork. Carrie Cassidy is one that a lot of people don't know about, but she was really instrumental in that she had something called Project Camelot, which was a TV network kind of a thing that had hundreds of interviews with people who claimed to have been abducted by aliens or experienced UFO phenomenon in some way. And so she started doing all these interviews, but it was kind of like she would just interview anybody, and so she just had hundreds and hundreds of hours of content, and it was all on there. But it made her the place to go for a lot of people who were trying to get their story out there. A lot of people want to tell their story, and that's how their sort of journey in this community begins. And so she was, somebody who promoted people like Corey Goode and David Wilcock, who I will talk about later, but also someone named Mark Richards, who claims he used to be a secret space soldier, convicted murderer, right? So, but she believes that he was the secret space soldier, and she visits him in prison and takes notes with a little pencil. She was always complaining about she has a little pencil that she has to take notes in the prison, and she records her interviews with him where he tells her what's going on with the space battles off past the solar system or whatever. She kind of takes on whatever the personality or beliefs are of the people she's interviewing. Her much like some of the other people, her channel had a lot of subscribers, 300,000 subscribers. That's not a bad number considering the topic. And had been on for 17 years, but it was taken down due to creator censorship surrounding the COVID-19 controversy, is what they say on their channel. Some key claims of Carrie: small pencils are the real enemy of disclosure. Draco reptilians are using humans for sex and food. And there can never be too many donation buttons on a website. Her website is crammed full of donation buttons. Carrie is one of the few people who has not been on Ancient Aliens. And honestly, I would say that the alien UFO community is very male-dominated. There's very few females that I think are allowed to have the spotlight in the community. But she's one of them. Richard Dolan is the dork nerd of the community, but he's probably one of the more harmless people in the community. I feel like he occasionally will push certain narratives that could be quite maybe against the mainstream, when it comes to more political topics. But he just writes books about UFOs. He's written like over 10 books about different UFO incidents, so they're kind of nonfiction. And then he'll mix in sort of theories of conspiracies of the national security state, the secret space program. He's a believer that there's a breakaway civilization of the super rich and powerful that, have bunkers and a whole other society built up for themselves, or a civilization that broke away a long time ago and has developed on its own. So he's got a lot of that kind of stuff in what he talks about. He's definitely cool because he calls out the people that are really crazy people, or at least he used to. Now he's a little bit more, he'll align with the popular people. So he thinks, he's cool with Lou Elizondo, but he's not as cool maybe with David Wilcock and Corey Goode. I think he believes what he says a little bit, but I do think he's trying to make money. He sells lots of books. He has lots of things through his website. You should listen to him if you're a huge nerd. I think he's mostly a harmless dork. He does think that 9/11 was a staged event, and he does think he's smarter than you. But yeah. And next is Corey Goode. He's another good one that got me stoked into this. Here we go. We got some questions here. Sorry about this. I'm just rattling on, guys. Sorry. So much information or misinformation, Jeremy says. Jeremy gets it. There you go. Actual Dracula says, curious how you would rank Bob Lazar. Well, I'll talk about Jeremy Corbell in a little bit, and I'll mention Bob Lazar when I do that. The viral meme Ancient Alien guy. I love Giorgio Tsoukalos. That guy's hilarious, and I love Ancient Aliens. I prefer to watch Ancient Aliens, though, the Action Bronson version where he gets stoned and they watch it with a bunch of rappers. That version is much more fun. But Corey Goode kind of has been a crash and burn, rising. He was like a flash in the pan in the UFO community. He came on the scene on Gaia Network. He had a show with David Wilcock where he talked about being part of the space program and how he did this thing called the 20 and Back program, where he went into space for 20 years and did a tour of duty where he was an empath and a kind of a super soldier who had telepathic powers, and then they age regressed him and transported him back in time and put him back where he was taken originally when he was like 17. And then he did that again later in his life. So he did multiple 20 and Back programs. And him and David would talk, and then there would be illustrations on the screen on this Gaia show called Cosmic Disclosure. And they were just, it was ridiculous, you guys. One of the big things that Corey had in there was that the aliens he's communicating with were called the Blue Avians, and they were sort of these blue feathered people with beaks that had like I don't know, like emo haircuts. Anyway, everyone was all about David for a little bit, and Corey. And Corey, eventually they made some documentaries, but then more and more everyone who worked with Corey would get kind of pushed away and say, don't talk to him. And then more and more people. And finally, he just alienated almost the entire community. And then he tried to sue multiple people in the UFO community for stealing his IP. And he said in a deposition, which is really hilarious to watch, he was deposed and admitted that he made all this up, but he's still currently saying that it's true, even though he also says that since he made it up, even though it's true, it's his intellectual property. And so he got mad because other people were saying they were secret, in the secret space program. And he said, well, I made that up. You can't do that. Anyway, I don't think he believes anything he says. I think he's a grifter. I think he's an off-the-charts narcissist, and I think he needs help. Him and David don't even really talk anymore, and they're involved in a lawsuit together as well with the Gaia Network. And I'm very excited to see how that turns out. This is sort of like my soaps, you guys. This is like my soaps. How did I get into these space? How did you get into this space? Well, I've always been into aliens and stuff, ever since I was a kid, and I would like watch X-Files, and I remember reading. I did a book report on Communion, the Whitley Strieber book Communion, when I was like in 6th grade, and I was just always very intrigued by all that stuff and unsolved mysteries and In Search of. The Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, those kind of mysteries and aliens and cryptids and all that. And, got really into the X-Files and Independence Day and all those things. And so I've always been interested in it. But over the last maybe 10 years, my interest has gone from thinking about the possibilities of what's real to more realizing how much of these types of people are in here that are maybe acting in bad faith, and how much of it is sort of a false narrative that is a little more comforting than just not knowing. There's comfort in knowing. But anyway, now it's more that these people have come out. They're, things like YouTube and podcasting. They can just talk and talk and talk about the topic, and they say interesting things, but also hilarious things. And they also form all these little cliques and have infighting between each other. And so now I'm interested in it more as a spectator of, this sort of real life community. And I don't know if that's cynical or predatory of me to do that. It's not like I wish any ill will on these people, but I find the whole situation very interesting. Jeremy Corbell, Tyrell is watching his programs. That's right, Nick gets it. And hey, if you get some good art out of it, why not? And so maybe you guys, if you pick up the book on my website when I put it up for sale, you might read some of this, get interested, and I bet you'll find at least one of these people interesting to listen to. Whether it's because you think what they're saying is legit, or whether because you think it's so crazy that it's hilarious, or whether you just, want to hear the news about it, right? Because some of these guys are just sort of presenting the UFO news. So Jeremy Kenyon Locker Corbell, this guy came around the scene around the same time as Lou Elizondo. Before that, he was like a kind of a weird failed installation artist, and his family owns a lot of real estate. So I have a feeling that he kind of just played around a lot, because he also came up with something he called quantum jiu-jitsu, which is what he says is sort of a jiu-jitsu and yoga mashup, which he taught at the University of Santa Cruz, California, University of California, Santa Cruz, which when I looked into that, there's claims that he made this thing up and that he taught this class, but all the claims are sourced to his own website and an ad that he put in Black Belt Magazine. And so he always says he was in Black Belt Magazine, but it's basically just an ad piece. I can't find any information about his students really, but they do claim that his class, the yoga jiu-jitsu class, is still being taught at Santa Cruz, although he's not teaching it. Anyway, he says that he almost died in Nepal, and that's why he stopped doing martial arts. Although he still likes to talk about things like martial arts when he's on Joe Rogan. He's another Joe Rogan alumni. His documentary film that brought him to prominence was the one he did about Bob Lazar, called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and the Flying Saucers. Pretty interesting documentary. Bob Lazar is one of the OG UFO guys. He would be in this second volume if I did this again. There was a time when I was really kind of enamored with Bob's story, but over the years, his story has kind of expanded, or he's brought some new information out whenever it feels like he's lost prominence. And, sometimes those things contradict. Sometimes the additions are so fantastical that it makes you wonder a little bit more. Also, the fact that he can't provide any sort of documentation of his college education or his military, credentials working on the base. Plus he's been arrested and raided by the FBI multiple times, and he was operating a brothel. Jeremy Corbell left a lot of that stuff out, or he said that the raids were about UFO information, but it was actually because he was selling chemicals illegally, if you look at the police records. And so, Bob Lazar, I'm a little less convinced of him now, but he sure has some interesting information, and he's definitely a fun, maybe backyard scientist. Jeremy, my biggest problem with Jeremy is that he's a dude bro. Got the tattoo sleeves, the big beard, he wears cool clothes. Most of his documentaries are him walking in slow motion or talking on his phone like this. And he swears a lot, and he makes a lot of big claims. I think he's kind of a douchebag, if I can use that term. Right now he's doing a podcast with George Knapp called Weaponized. George Knapp is another OG. I would love to do more about him. But when he hooked up with Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp's credibility went through the floor for me. I think Jeremy is 100% a grifter. I don't think he has any true beliefs about UFOs at all. And I think he's a big-time narcissist. Because he sure thinks he's important. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more of these. A couple more left. David Icke is the guy who sort of believes in reptilians being bad aliens that are trying to eat us and stuff. But when I looked into David, I had heard about him as sort of the crazy reptilian guy. But when I looked into him, I felt a little bit more empathy for him, because he was a footballer or a soccer player, but a footballer, and he retired because he was diagnosed with severe rheumatoid arthritis. But after that, so it's like he'd ended his sports career pretty early, and I thought that was kind of a bummer. But then he became like a television presenter, talking about games and stuff, and kind of like a minor celebrity. But then he got into new age stuff and alternative medicine, and then he started hearing voices, and then he talked to a psychic healer, and then he got a message that he was going to become famous, and he was the son of God and the Godhead. And he went on TV and said this, and everybody kind of laughed at him. And he's sort of been popular in the UFO community off and on, but become a joke to the mainstream in England at least. But he's written 27 books about the things that he believes or that he's been channeled to the truth about aliens. But he's also, a conspiracy theorist about COVID-19 and the New World Order and things like that. A lot of neo-Nazis, Christian patriots, and truthers seem to like him. But shockingly, he's not a fan of Donald Trump, which is strange. Most of these other people are. I do think he's a true believer, but that's because I think he needs help. I think that David is a hurt person that needs some help. He was on the one of my favorite things. It's not in here, but he was on the what was that show called? There was a show, a conspiracy theory show with Jesse Ventura. So I have Jesse Ventura here, and Jesse Ventura was not buying it. He was like, "You're telling me there's reptilians listening on the radio?" He was not buying David Icke's story. If you can find the clip online, it's hilarious. Let's see. Frank Dukes method. There you go. Jeremy, you get it. Frank Dukes is another old school grifter. He's not aliens, but he's an old school grifter. He's the old school sort of bullshito guy. I bet you could sell these art pieces to these guys for some good money. Maybe, Kova, maybe. Actual Dracula says they've watched some episodes of Weaponized. Nothing new, just talking in circles. Yes. What you're going to find, Actual Dracula, is these guys they kick the can, They're like, this guy's the king of kicking the can. He started saying that the world was going to end in 2012, and he never admitted he was wrong, even though obviously we're still here. But these guys they're just like, in next month, man, the biggest news is going to drop. Jeremy will be like that. David will be like that. All these people will be like that. They'll be like, next month, in 2 months, we're going to have an awakening. Oh, the arrests are going to happen, whatever it is. And then something will happen, or nothing will happen. And then they'll say something got in the way, or, the plan was changed. David's kind of the king of that. But this guy is hilarious. He streams like 4 or 5 hour streams, 4 or 5 hour streams on Sundays. And they're all over the place, man. He does PowerPoint presentations. He does characters. But the characters are all the same character, like someone smoking a fake cigarette with glasses, and they're all very offensive. Like one's called Tramaw, another one's called Galian. He does one called Colin McGeezer, an angry daddy, which is him doing his father impersonation. He's kind of losing his mind live on live stream, but I'm gonna go through the key claims for David. That might be the easiest way here. So. He's in contact with the Archangel Michael in his dreams, getting prophetic information on disclosure. So he believes he is or is in contact with the Archangel Michael. The Archangel Michael told him that if you pee in your bathwater before you bathe, it helps you gain a higher consciousness. So David believes that. David said live on his stream that he saved Donald Trump from assassination by moving the bullet with his telekinetic powers while he was asleep. He also has a big money deal coming through Stavati next week, which Stavati is an aerospace company that he's on the board of. But this aerospace company has never made an airplane before. They're just stealing his money. It's pretty hilarious. And then he always makes a lot of references to things that are very, that he's always under attack. He thinks that he's being attacked, by people trying to kill him in some way, or people trying to hack his information. He's a paranoid guy. He lives in the mountains by himself. But if you just need a friend on a Sunday and you just want to listen to some guy ramble, David never disappoints. He'll talk about the most wild stuff. So I recommend it. There's also a lot of people who just sort of critique these people, and they're interesting to listen to. Everyone in this book, including these people, have some views that I would say are unconventional and could be seen as offensive or dangerous. And so I'm not going to vouch for any of these people. Proceed with caution. If it offends you, turn it off. Watch something else. But there's some guys like Mick West who's always debunking the UFO videos. So if you see a UFO video, go see what Mick West says. He has a lot of good analytics to go through them. Stephen Greenstreet's on just a mission to bring all these guys down. Stephen Cambion as well. Hidden in Plain Sight. They're the stoner guys who watch these dudes. They're great. John Greenwald has a website called the Black Vault, which is full of information he's gotten from the Freedom of Information Act. And so he has all the UFO files that you can get, and he's always getting new ones. Dark Journalist, he's a little cheesy, and then Sneezing Monkey is a very modern take on these guys. But yeah, this will be for sale, and I don't have a lot of copies. I printed a very small print run. So these will be dropping probably in the next couple weeks on my website, along with the Planet Death covers, which I showed earlier, and some other stuff. Maybe my Fantastic Four book, which is coming out. All right. Let's see. I hope I didn't offend anybody here. I've watched the episodes of Weaponize. Actual Dracula agrees that Corbell is a grifter, always on the fence about Bob Lazar because he does seem genuine. And that's if his story is huge, that's true. That is true. The pee in the bathwater thing is news to me. That Edison, yeah. David used to come across as very, like, David was originally, I think he was like, people liked his deep research into things, and he would do these big PowerPoint presentations of how, if you, do these different things and look at this different historical information from different religions, blah, 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 it all makes sense. And he was always connecting all the dots, And so he was kind of a virtuoso for a while. But then as time went on, he got sucked into, one of the big things that hurt him was he got sucked into QAnon, and he just got all in on QAnon, and that kind of derailed him from UFOs. And then after QAnon, he became kind of a Trump, MAGA type person that was, pushing that narrative. And he still dabbles with the UFO stuff, and there's a lot of metaphysical things. Now he's trying to become more of a religious teacher, I think, now. But if you go back to his older stuff, he's got years and years of this stuff. He covers all kinds of different topics, the pyramids and synchronicities, and he's written some New York Times bestsellers, in small categories. And then if you really want to get into something hilarious, if you like music or if you hate music, David recorded a soft rock album called Wanderer Awakening. And it's got spoken word sections and musical sections, and it's all about him becoming, like, having a spiritual awakening. And boy, it is something. There's about 8 of the tracks on YouTube, or at least there used to be. And if you love music and you love comedy, go check out David Wilcox's Wanderer Awakening record. It is wild. And if that doesn't hook you, I don't know what will. And so if that intrigues you guys, there's way more information in here than what I was able to say. I used small fonts. And also the drawings are all collected in here. I might make the drawings available as well. I don't know if anyone would actually buy these, though, so we'll see. But yeah, folks, if you haven't already, tell your local shop. I think final order cutoff already happened, but Fantastic Four Fanfare number 4 is out in, I think, a week or 2 weeks. And I will hopefully have some available after that, but I encourage you all to go pick it up. It's a really fun story I did. Danny Warren Johnson wrote it, and so it's just a wild ride, wrestling, it's big time fun match, and I think you guys will really dig it. If you haven't liked and subscribed, go ahead and do that. I hope you guys will join me again. I'll see if I can do next week. If not, the week after, I'll get back to the drawing board. I've been thumbnailing all day, though, and I am very tired, and I don't think I can get any drawing done tonight. So I will see you guys next week. I thank you all for coming. I hope you found this interesting. I didn't mean any offense to anybody with any of it. People can believe whatever they want, and I completely respect that. But I just wanted to show you kind of this world that I've been interested in for a little while. And no offense to any of those guys either. But everyone have a great evening, and I will see you all in a future Tuesday.